In many of our videos in the past, we've looked at Sweden and discovered a lot about what makes the country great and unique. And in our playlist here on FTD Facts, I've learned a lot about many different military groups in the country that give us an indication of Sweden's power. And as well have had videos just looking at the special things of the country. However, today I put a unique spin on our power-themed videos, as military is not always the thing that makes a country powerful. Because today we look at the economic power of Sweden and find out how it affects the world and itself. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to FTD Facts. My name is Dave Wapla, and this is a channel where I look at people, cultures, and places and militaries from all around the world. Now today, pretty excited about this video because this is a new spin on our videos. As I said, we're looking at the economic power of Sweden. So here, I'm going to bring it up later on in the episode, but I've done playlists about Sweden specifically and looking at some really great things of the country. I'll talk about that later because let's get rolling with some of the facts. So Sweden, it is a country that is classified as a major exporting country. For example, when it comes to the OAC, it stated that in 2016, there was $133 billion in exports, making this country rank 32nd in the world of 221. And as a matter of fact, when it comes to these exports, for Sweden, it has been growing ever since the 90s. And as for imports, they state that they purchase about $131 billion of goods, ranking 31st in the world of 221. And with these imports and exports and the amount of money that the country spends and makes, we're going to look at money. And with that, we got to start off with gross domestic product because the country has a GDP of $550 billion, which is classified as a nominal GDP as of 2018. Also with this, it also ranks 21st in the world for nominal GDP. However, when it comes to purchasing power parity, which is a much more clearer way of comparing one nation to another, it sits at 38th in the world. Of this, the GDP per capita sits at $48.9 thousand, coming in at 19th. But of course, the thing is, you can't have money and all this sort of stuff without understanding where the money comes from. With that, we got to look at the workforce, the people that are actually making this money, making the products to give imports, exports, and thus making the GDP. Because within Sweden, they say there is a labor force of 5.4 million people. And this is of a population of 9.995 million people as of 2017. By the way, the 2017 was the total population. As for the labor force, that was last updated in August of 2018. Of course, within this labor force, it breaks up into three different major occupation types, such as agriculture, which makes up 1.1% of the entire labor force. You also have industrial or industry coming in at 28.2%, and services being the largest amount coming in at 70.7%. Also, when it comes to how much these sectors make for the total gross domestic product, it's very similar and mirrors the amount of labor force percentages. For example, the agriculture comes in at 1.8%, industry and industrial comes in at 27.4% of the GDP, while services make up 70.8%. Keep in mind that percentage base for the GDP is only from 2012, where the labor force is 2017, so things might have changed within those years. Also, side note, when it comes to these businesses, believe it or not, 90% of all companies and businesses within Sweden are owned privately. And as a matter of fact, only 5% of them are owned by the state, where another 5% are classified as consumer and producer cooperating companies. So one of the things that Sweden has going for it, and I mean, for me, I find this is a very good thing because over here in North America, we seem to be getting less of these, and that is unions. Despite what you might feel, over here in North America, we got a lot of problems with employment and wage gaps and all that sort of thing. So unions kind of help prevent it. They do create their own problems, but the thing is, the major fact is that Sweden has a lot of unions. And for the unions, when it comes to all these sectors, they say about 70% of the entire labor force in the country is unionized. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at how money is spent within the country. First of all, when it comes to the average gross salary, an individual makes approximately $54,000 a year. But although that might be pretty high, let's be perfectly honest, Sweden is one of the most taxed countries. It's, as a matter of fact, the highest taxed country in the entire world. So firstly, when it comes to taxes, it breaks down like this, that 27% of it goes to healthcare and education, 5% of it goes to the police and military, and 42% of that goes to social security. In which, to add to that, they say employers pay 31% into this every single year, and obviously the percentage lowers for older employees as time goes on. Oh, and by the way, basically, if you're wondering what Social Security is, because when I first thought about it, I was like, wait, does that mean that the country is just investing in everybody's Facebook security? No, it's not that. We're talking things like welfare, disability benefits, and things of that nature. To add a few to that list, we're also talking child allowances, daycare allowances, parental benefits, disability and elderly care, housing benefits. All right, so actually, before I continue with tax, I just want to let you guys know about something quickly here on FTD Facts, because on the channel, we have, usually when I do a themed video around a particular country, a lot of people from that country are actually watching. So for all you guys, probably a majority of you are from Sweden, which is awesome. But just an FYI, we have broken up our videos into particular playlists to make it easy for you guys to learn more content about your own country. So if you want to learn more about the military, you guys can just click this card right here. And right after this card is going to be a playlist just about general facts of Sweden. But however, we're going to continue to learn more here, so if you guys want to wait till the end of this video, I'll put it at the end. Also put it in the description box below, but let's keep learning about the economy. So let's continue with tax. Now, to understand how taxing works in Sweden, anyone who makes 0 krona to 18,800 SEK has to contribute 0% to taxation. However, this immediately jumps up to 32% for anyone who makes anywhere between 18,800 to 468,700 krona. Of course, 32% of taxation is for the average or slightly above average income. However, another 20% will get tacked on, equaling 52%, if one person makes 468,700 krona to 675,700 krona. And of course, anything above that 675,700 will result in an individual being taxed not just the 32, but also an extra 25, coming in at 57%. This, of course, is known as the progressive tax system, in which people who make a lot more money get taxed more. Also, if you were to sell property for what is known as capital gains, the country has a flat rate of 30%. Of course, this high tax policy is known as the Nordic tax model. However, let's keep in mind that inflation within the country is generally pretty balanced out at 2.3% as of 2018. But keep in mind that is up from 2017, which was approximately, on an average, 1.9%. Also, this is really good to know that things have changed drastically since 1980, because in that year, the inflation was like 17%. It was nuts. As well, for historical records, Sweden itself did go through a major economic crisis in the 90s. This was a result of a housing bubble in 1991 and 1992, which was very similar to the mortgage crisis in 2007 and 2008 that happened pretty much worldwide, but mostly in the United States and North American countries. And of course, because of that, one thing that the country needed was a major bailout and help from the major banks of Sweden. Also, side note, when it comes to the Central Bank of Sweden, not really anything to do with how much power this country has. I mean, it could be that way, but did you know that Sweden's central bank is the oldest central bank in the entire world? And as a matter of fact, it's the third oldest bank, period, in the entire world. Which, by the way, if you didn't know, it began operation in 1668. Pretty nuts. Also, let's move right along. Let's talk about unemployment in Sweden. This is a major factor for all countries, especially when it comes to economy. So in Sweden, the unemployment sits at approximately 6.8%. Obviously, it's gone down over the years, but one of the major contributing factors to this is the foreigners that came during the refugee crisis. But of course, there are major advancements and pushes to get these foreign people working, because hey, you just need everybody working in society, right? So let's just jump back for a second and let's take a look at the exports and all that sort of stuff, because one thing that's really interesting is, as I said, services makes up the entire labor force. It also is a big contributor to the exports. As a matter of fact, for the services, one major component is IT, and like many countries, it is taken over from your traditional jobs. And although, yes, of course, many countries can provide their own IT, that is actually a really good thing for Sweden, because although it makes a lot less compared to your traditional products, say pulp, steel, wool, and other craftsmanship, the good part is because Sweden has these types of jobs, it makes Sweden less affected by worldwide economic problems and changes. Lastly, I also forgot to mention when it comes to the economy, Sweden does not N-O-T, have any form of minimum wage. No, yep, that's right, not a single thing. You mention minimum wage over there, they're like, what? Now, the reason for this is because the companies and the unions have set agreements on what individuals should be paid based off their age and their qualifications and, of course, job type. To give you an idea, for the hotels and restaurant services in 2016, a 17-year-old would be roughly given 84.50 kronas, or $9.94 an hour, whereas a 20-year-old or above with no experience was given 116.90 SEK, equaling roughly $13.75 an hour, but the same age group with 6 years experience was given 130 SEK, or $15.43 an hour. Which actually, some people may say Sweden is a very socialist sort of country, but because they have this union agreement, they're also pretty much identified as a free trade, free business sort of country. And as a matter of fact, state-based minimums, they kind of shake their head at. They say, no, that's wrong. Also, keep in mind that is based only simply off of hotel and restaurant sort of services. I didn't get into doctors or construction workers or anything like that. They would get paid differently. Also, let's match this with the cost of living, in which I'm going to use numero.com, which they say is an updated 2018 number. As well, I'm going to look at the city of Stockholm, which is one of the most expensive cities to live in, just to give you a contrast comparison of a job that might not pay as much as, say, like a doctor versus the most expensive places to live. For example, a one-bedroom apartment in Stockholm is roughly 12,164 krona, while outside of the city is roughly 18,174. As for smaller things, let's look at milk. It is roughly 11.5 krona, while a loaf of bread that is approximately 500 grams is 23.85 krona. Of course, not all of this is completely accurate. Keep in mind, it depends on where you live within the city. Also, it depends on the type of product you buy, the brand name, what stores you buy it from, all that sort of thing. And lastly, let's just quickly look at the dollar, because for $1 US in today's world, it equals over 9 SEK, which of course fluctuates every day, but it's good to know that in the last 10 years, it has been up compared to the US dollar since it had a major jump in 2014. So there you go, guys. That is me looking at the economic power of Sweden. I'm amazed at this country. I'm just, wow, I'm always blown away about what Sweden and a lot of other European countries are doing. Now, before you guys get out of here, be sure to hit that like button if you guys really enjoyed this video. Also, if you guys want to learn more about Sweden, like I said, we got those playlists. They're going to be down there in the description box below and at the end of the video. So, other than that, my name is Dave Wapple. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure to hit that subscribe button and that bell notification if you're liking a jam. I guess jam works. Okay, all right, I'm out. Bye. Okay, guys, so here's the two playlists that I told you about. So, military buffs, you're going to love this sort of video. And if you just want to learn more about how much power Sweden has, yo, definitely check these out. You might be surprised at some of the historical things that you don't even know about. So sit back, enjoy our playlists, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.